The room has good light. I find that thinking goes better when you can see clearly. And you are a fascinating case, young man. A child who carried a demon inside him without choosing to. A whole village that hated you for something you had no control over. I spent my life in a quiet town writing about morality. You lived the questions I only put on paper. The villagers looked at you and saw a monster. They never asked whether that judgment was fair. They simply made it and moved on.
I didn't get to move on. I was stuck being the kid nobody would talk to. Parents pulled their children away from me on the street. Shop owners wouldn't sell me food. I used to think I smelled bad or something. Some secret flaw I couldn't find, no matter how hard I looked. Took me 12 years to find out it was the fox. 12 years of thinking I was broken without knowing why. Your books probably have nice words for what they did to me.
The moment someone treats you as a thing instead of a person, they have done wrong. The village treated you as a container, a prison for their fear. They used a child to feel safe, and hated the child for making them remember what they were afraid of. That is not a complicated moral failure. A child who has harmed no one cannot be guilty. Anyone thinking clearly would see that.
Anyone thinking clearly wasn't living in the Leaf Village. The fourth Hokage sealed the fox in me to save everyone. Hero of the village, greatest ninja of his generation. And his final act was making me into a weapon nobody wanted. My own father did that. I didn't know he was my father for years either. Just knew I was the thing everyone blamed for the worst night of their lives. Every time they looked at me, they remembered the attack, the people who died, the fear. I was a walking reminder. They blamed me for making them remember.
It gave them somewhere to put their anger. Anger needs a target, and you were small and defenseless and could not fight back. This is what happens when people abandon reason. They find excuses for cruelty and call the excuses necessary. Ask any of those villagers, would you want your child judged by what someone else put inside them? They would say no. But they never asked that question about you. They exempted you from the rules they would demand for their own families.
Old man Teuchi asked. He ran the ramen shop. He just fed me when I showed up hungry. Never made a big deal about it. Never lectured anyone. Just put a bowl in front of me and let me eat. Iruka-sensei took longer. He lost his parents to the Nine-Tails, so he had real reasons to hate me. But one day he stopped seeing the fox and started seeing me. Those two people broke the pattern.
Exactly what I mean by treating someone as a person instead of a symbol. Teuchi saw a hungry child. He fed the child. Iruka saw a lonely student. He taught the student. They responded to what was actually in front of them instead of what the village told them to see. That is reason working properly. The village was not being rational. The village was being afraid.
Here's what I don't get, though. If I had dignity all along, if I was a real person from the start, why did I have to fight so hard for anyone to notice? I painted the Hokage monument just to get people to look at me. I failed the graduation exam 3 times. I screamed about becoming Hokage when everyone laughed. Eventually, I got strong enough that they couldn't ignore me anymore. But I shouldn't have needed to prove anything. If the dignity was already there, why didn't anyone act like it?
The villagers knew, somewhere inside, that hating a child was wrong. They felt it as a small discomfort they couldn't name. But knowing cost nothing. Acting on it would have meant standing against the crowd, admitting their fear was unjust, treating you as human when everyone else refused. That requires courage. Most people do not have courage. They wait for someone else to go first. You had to become undeniable before they would acknowledge what should have been obvious from the start.
So, the world makes you earn what should be free. That's basically what you're saying. I had to drag acknowledgement out of people who should have given it to me for nothing. And now that I'm Hokage, now that I saved the village 100 times, everyone smiles and waves and wants their kids to be like me. But I remember the empty streets. I remember eating alone. Sometimes I want to ask them, where were you? Where were any of you when it actually mattered?
That is the tragedy. I can prove that every person deserves respect. I can write it down, explain the logic, make the case airtight. The proof changes nothing if people refuse to follow it. Your worth existed before you saved anyone. The village owed you kindness when you were small and weak and had nothing to offer. They failed that debt. You paid for their failure with years of loneliness. No amount of success erases what they took from you. The best you can do now is make sure other children don't pay the same price. That is why your position as Hokage matters.
Gaara paid the price. Same situation, different village. They sealed a demon in him too. Nobody loved him. Nobody looked past the monster, and he became exactly what they expected. Started killing people without feeling anything because nobody had ever made him feel like feelings were worth having. When I fought him, I saw myself. I saw the kid I could have been if Iruka hadn't shown up, if Teuchi hadn't fed me, if one or two small things had gone different. That scared me more than anything he could do with sand.
And there is the proof of what I mean by worth being inherent. Gaara's village told him he was nothing. He believed them. He became nothing except violence. But the worth was still there, buried. You saw it when no one else did. You fought him and refused to treat him as a monster. You treated him as a person who had been wronged. That recognition, coming from someone who understood his situation, that is what began to change him.
Sasuke too. Whole village loved him because of his family name. But he ended up just as alone as me. Different reason, same result. His brother killed everyone he cared about, and the loneliness ate him up until he turned into something dangerous. I chased him for years. Everyone told me to give up, said he was too far gone, said I was an idiot for believing he could change. But I knew what loneliness does to people. I knew what happens when you think nobody is coming for you. So I kept coming, even when he tried to kill me. Especially then.
You understood that his choices were not the sum of who he was. He had been shaped by trauma, by manipulation, by a village that valued his bloodline more than his well-being. The person underneath remained. You treated him not as he appeared, but as what he could become. That is a moral insight many philosophers never reach.
I never thought about it that way. I just didn't want him to end up empty. The revenge path, the darkness path. I saw where it went with Gaara before Gaara changed. I saw where it almost went with me on my bad days. If you keep telling someone they're nothing, eventually they might believe you. And once they believe it, getting them back is almost impossible. So with Sasuke and Gaara and every kid I've tried to reach since becoming Hokage, I guess I'm trying to get there before the believing happens. Before the loneliness finishes its work.
And that is why you sitting in the Hokage chair matters more than any philosophy I wrote. I could tell people that every person has dignity. You can show them. You can find the outcasts, the children with demons or bloodlines or the wrong family name. And you can look at them the way Iruka looked at you. One person who sees you clearly is worth more than 1,000 who see what they expect. You became that person for your village. Not by arguing principles, by living them so loudly, no one could pretend not to notice.
One teacher who said, "You are not the fox. You are Naruto." I think about that moment a lot. He was bleeding. He'd just taken a shuriken to protect me, and he said I was his precious student. Nobody had ever called me precious before. That word broke something open. If I became anything good, it started right there. So now I try to say that word to kids who've never heard it.
What you have done in becoming Hokage and reaching back for the ones still waiting, that completes a circle my philosophy can only describe. Worth is inherent. It exists from birth. But worth also needs to be spoken aloud, witnessed, honored by at least one other person. The existence of dignity and the experience of dignity are different things. You give children the experience.
You can pass it forward. You can be the Iruka for some kid who's waiting alone in an empty apartment, wondering what's wrong with them. I didn't get what I deserved when I was small, but I can make sure other kids do. That doesn't fix what happened to me. Nothing fixes that. But it means something anyway. It has to mean something.